Hey, everybody. It's great to see everybody still here, so thank you for that. And yeah, we're going to be attempting a kind of late summer, early fall gathering at Gwinnett Hills. We're super excited. So what we don't get to do, we got those hands-on workshops this year, and we just in the middle of winter in Wisconsin, we just don't have the chance to be like on farms, hands in dirt, really see some of these farming methods in action. So we're really excited to be hosted by Gwinnett Hills. The next day will be Bike the Barns, so everybody can join in on that. And then we're working on maybe a fabulous chef dinner that'll happen the evening before. So we're excited to try a different time of year and gather community kind of in the midway when maybe we've got a little bit of a breather sometimes that time of year, even for those of us that are feeding communities with lots of great veggies. So I guess I officially am now introducing our next speaker, who probably doesn't need introduction at all, but in this moment, it's been a challenge, right? And like, is food the right fight? And I saw a documentary on Tractorcade, and I think, unless I imagined it, there was a sign that said, if you don't want to get involved, stop eating. And so we all need to eat, and our next speaker has fully embraced the power of food to create change. And our time together this weekend has explored production, farm business, farmer wellness, and we've heard from speakers that are working toward changing the systems that disadvantage the farmers in this room, that are caring for the animals, the land, and that feed us. So I am so excited to have Luke Zahm with us. He's a chef, he's an activist, and he sees all of the ways that food can truly save us. So Luke.
Hi. I'm happy to announce that, this conference has been going on for a long time, almost in my backyard. My restaurant in my hometown is Lafarge, Wisconsin, population 745. I heard a couple whistles there, thank you. 54639 for life. And I left the area for a while to come back home to cook. And it was because of farmers and farm organizations like this one that made my journey in food absolutely possible. As we get started today, I want to give it a little bit of acknowledgement. Where we're sitting right now is part of the sovereign nation of the Ho-Chunk Nation, the indigenous folks who were here long before we were. And in fact, if you want to see an act of resilience, read up on the warrior Redbird. This was his place, the prairie of La Crosse. And he fought for his people when they were being divided and pushed. And as a matter of fact, we are now in the year 2026, correct? 200 years ago, almost to this month, the President of the United States of America announced that everything that was on the other side of that river that's immediately outside of this conference center was indigenous land. 200 years ago. Now, if you think about that, you break that down, that's like 5 or 6 generations removed. That's not that long. I want to call that into attention because a lot of the argument that I hear around food policy in America right now is, well, this is the way that we've always done it. So this is the way that we should do it going forward. And I can tell you that as a creative individual, as someone who values new ideas, as someone who values energy and ideas, that is the death of creativity. And the reason that I am so proud for this opportunity to be in front of you today is to empower and enable that sentiment that you might feel. This is not a problem. that has a clear and easy solution. But my brothers and sisters in this room, you are the warriors on the front line. You are the act of resistance. By growing food at your individual scales and with your individual ideals of sustainability and viability, by just existing, you are fighting the mechanization of the American food system. And for that, I have to say thank you. I'm glad I got that one out, you know? If there was one thing you take away from that, like, oh, that moment in time that Luke said that was nice. I want to back up a little bit. So I grew up, as I said, in Lafarge, Wisconsin, population 745. For those of you that don't know Lafarge, if you haven't driven around Vernon County, which is one county to the south of here, for a long time, Vernon County has held the distinction of having the second highest concentration of organic farms in any county in the United States of America. Yeah. This is pretty much ground zero. Coming into the Driftless region, and you can see why. You look at the geography, you look at the hills, you understand that large-scale agriculture isn't easy here. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's not easy. And it's created a safe haven. The Driftless region in and of itself, it's this quiet pocket that until I started running my big mouth about it, people didn't necessarily know about. That being said, in the last 4 months, we've done interviews with the Wall Street Journal, with the New York Times, with the Washington Post. And what I'm saying is that the world is waking up to what's happening right here. Being that this is a community we value. Going back, being a high school kid here, feeling like I am a fish out of water. Anybody in here from the Driftless region? Okay. Anybody in here grow up in a small town? Okay, that's a little bit better. I'll speak to the small town aspect, all right? When you are from a place like Lafarge, Wisconsin, you end up spending a lot of time describing where you're from as being, kind of halfway between Minneapolis and Chicago. Or if you're familiar with the geography of Wisconsin, you know that you're kind of in between like Madison and La Crosse, right? All of that is to say, you find yourself strangely marginalized in your existence. I felt like when I was growing up in the 1990s in beautiful Vernon County that I was as far away from any bright spot of the universe as I could be. I had one saving grace, one hero. His name is Butch Vig. Butch Vig was the guy that I found out. I heard when I was in 6th grade, this rock and roll song came on MTV that I saw in a hotel room in Madison because we didn't have cable. And I was like, this MTV is really cool. And then all of a sudden I heard the beginning lines, dun 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 dun. The first time I'd ever heard Nirvana. Smells Like Teen Spirit. I took my money the next day right here to La Crosse, the Shopco on South Side. I bought Nirvana Nevermind on tape. A couple weeks later, I found out that a dude from Viroqua produced the entire album. It's remarked that he was the death of hair metal, which I saw that Warrant is now coming back around. So maybe we got to bring Butch back in. I don't know. But it created this seed of identity. I graduated from Lafarge in 1998 with 23 classmates, 17 of which who I started kindergarten with. 10 years prior, 1988, there were 7 small farms, mainly located in Crawford and Vernon County, that were interested in growing produce. And as they started talking and sharing stories and a vision for what growing produce maybe more collectively, or some might say cooperatively, would look like, They formed the Coulee Region Organic Produce Pool. Coulee Region Organic Produce Pool, they still have their fingers in the produce pie. They grow food. But a year later, a farmer by the name of Dave Engel, he was a dairy farmer. Both of his sons actually are produce farmers. If you've ever bought a Driftless Organics potato, and I don't want to call out favorites here because I don't know how many potato growers I have in the room, and I don't want to ostracize you and be like, that guy, obviously he's biased. I'm not. But Driftless Organics potatoes are some of the finest potatoes you will ever have the pleasure of eating. Dave Engel suggested to these 7 families, hey, if we can cooperate on produce and market collectively, why can't we do the same thing with the dairy products that are so affluent in this region? What happens if we get small family farms together and we decide that we can collectively market this? And in that year, 1989, the brand Organic Valley was born. Now, as a high school student in Lafarge, we had the opportunity to have one of the salespeople from Organic Valley come in to our high school business class. And I will never forget the day. The gentleman's name was Alan Moody. He came into my high school business class and he said, this year, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Organic Valley did $20 million in sales. And we were floored, right? Because when you're from a kind of a financially starved, intergenerational poverty area in the United States of America, $20 million, that's crazy money, right? He might as well have been Elon up there telling us about, his $1 trillion merger. We were all like, wow, what is this? My mom had started working for the cooperative in 1991. As a marketing assistant, mainly to help define and strengthen the Oregon Tilth Act, to give it teeth, to give it a set of standards that a lot of you uphold to this very day. And in that process, I started understanding who my friends and neighbors were in that valley. I graduated the CEEIEIO. That's a farming joke, right? I wish I could say I wrote that one, but I didn't. He gifted all of the students whose parents worked for the cooperative, and they were leaving the valley, stacks of these Organic Valley free coupons. Right? So I am leaving Lafarge, Wisconsin, moving down to Chicago, which was as far away as I thought I could get. I am truly Midwestern. And I found myself living in the city. I was homesick, I was broke, and I was lost as a human. One day, my walking around the Wicker Park area, I stumbled into Lincoln Park. I didn't know what it was. I saw a Whole Foods store. I had never been in a Whole Foods. I'm on North Avenue. And I walked in. Yeah, 312 represent. There it is. Yeah. I walked into this Whole Foods, and it was like, what is this place? I had never been in a grocery store setting where so much beautiful food was there, but it seemed a little bit inaccessible, right? Like I couldn't actually afford to buy anything in there. And so I made a beeline for the dairy case because I know what's up. I see this Organic Valley beautiful cheese set, a display. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. To see this in Chicago? I walked and picked up a piece of cheese, and I'll never forget it. It was the pepper jack. And of course, I could be all jacked up about the fact that, like, yes, I'm going to get this for free, but you know what hit me? And it hit me like a freight train. I picked up that piece of cheese, and I flipped it over on the back. And you know where it said it was distributed from? Lafarge, Wisconsin. Population 745. That was my light bulb moment in life. I had found an identity. And the beautiful aspect was I had been participating in the annual meetings. I had been participating in the Kickapoo Country Fairs. I had seen the broad spectrum of community that food and farming could bring together. And I was rocked. I ended up dropping out of school in Chicago because I couldn't handle all that concrete. I found myself at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I'm one of those people that started cooking at 15. My dad owned a construction company. He was I won't say a failed farmer. He was a retired dairy farmer. And he started doing construction. So, as many of you know, when you turn 15 in a lot of farming families, you either got to be enrolled in extracurriculars or you got to get a job. And I'm a lousy athlete. So, we had one root beer stand in Lafarge. I am proud to say I was the first male car hop ever. Going to the trucks that were pulling up. Most of the, occupants of the trucks are expecting a high school age young lady to come and take their order. And here I am, running on 11. Who wants a chuck wagon? Yeah! You guys excited? I lasted 2 weeks as a car hop before they put me inside on the fryer. And if there was ever a defining moment in my life that kind of set up the whole story arc that we're going through here, it was that. I found my way in food. And that escalated to a job in Viroqua, which was a big deal at the time. I got my driver's license. Of course I'm going to get a job in the only town in the county with stoplights. I'm big time, baby. Got a job as a sandwich artist. My mom, whose birthday is today, my mom still, even after the James Beard Foundation recognizes as one of the best chefs of the Midwest, my mom still, when we go over to cook holidays, will very subtly, because she's Midwestern and she's passive aggressive, and I mean that from a place of love, she'll break out my certified sandwich artist certificate and just leave it on the kitchen counter. Keeps it real, keeps it humble. From there, I found myself in Madison, and so I started working in a little bit higher echelon restaurants. I went to a French bistro, and I had the pleasure of working for a chef named Anne Breckenridge. And Anne was a chef who was CIA trained at the Culinary Institute of America at Greystone out in California. Anne was mean. She was a screamer. And the thing that made it so disarming for me as a young man was that she had her 6-week-old baby on her back running the line and calling me an idiot for cutting butter the wrong way. I'm going to tell you right now that hell hath no fury like a lady cooking the line with the baby on her back. It's going to make you really sharp in your game because I don't want to get yelled at all night. And from that point, it kind of escalated rapidly. I had actually started law school at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I had the opportunity to work in an intellectual property litigation firm where we were the personal representation for the former Senator Russ Feingold. In a particular case, bipartisan campaign finance reform, BICRA, basically pulling the money out of politics. My job, aside from the restaurant cooking, was to line up SEC filings, the Security and Exchange Commission, SEC filings with campaign donations made in the 1996 election cycle by both the DNC and the RNC. And you know what I learned at the tender age of 22? This whole thing is rigged. It's broken. I knew that I couldn't pour my life into that. So I found a different way. I started going to the Dane County Farmers Market. I started running into the Engel brothers, with those delicious potatoes. I started buying them for the restaurant and bringing them back in. I started going to Dick Cates down in Spring Green and getting these cuts of meat that I actually wasn't technically proficient in using. But like you give someone with motivation and a book, this is before like YouTube could teach us all of this. It was so empowering. And the thing that I found out about myself is it wasn't even the act of cooking the food, but when I'm cooking the food and I'm taking that time to prepare it, I find myself with a deep sense of appreciation. And that appreciation lends itself to storylines. And I was finding myself coming out into the dining room of the restaurant as a line cook, which is not where you want your line cooks to be. To come to the table and be like, hey, you know where this came from? Giving that food an identity and a voice. Letting those diners experience the next level of what it means to eat and eat locally and eat with enthusiasm. And luckily, my cooking chops got better as we went along. I got asked to participate with the restaurant group in opening up this love letter to Wisconsin. It's a restaurant on the Capitol Square of Madison. It's called The Old Fashioned. And in putting together the menu for The Old Fashioned, we got to look around the state of Wisconsin and really look at our food traditions. See, what is it that we're pulling from? Because it was around that time in my life, I started hearing this phrase that has haunted me forever. The Midwest is flyover country when it comes to food. If you're not in San Francisco, or you're not in LA, or you're not in New York City, or Charleston, or Boston, are you even eating? And I was like, are you kidding? Your food comes from this place. We are the reason you have your food. I've never understood that disconnect. And as a matter of fact, it's given me so much passion and so much fury that I find myself in the lacrosse center on a Saturday afternoon, basically monologuing and ranting to you all about the fact that we have to find a way to wake the American food system up. There was a really pivotal moment for me. After we got that restaurant opened, I was offered a job to come open the culinary department for Epic. For those of you that don't know, Epic is a medical records computer system located in Verona, Wisconsin, that has an 800-acre campus. And they wanted food. I'm like, okay. I took the job because it had air conditioning. I was like, this is good. I got 2 babies at home. I can work daytimes, not so many weekends, or so I thought going into it. But to really get a chance to do some big food. And when I was there, I started talking with the farmer friend of mine that I had met a few restaurants prior. His name was Scotty Williams. And Scotty, at the time, was growing only heirloom tomatoes and microgreens. And so I sat down with Scotty one day in the dining room. I was like, bro, I got to get some local food in here. I've got a mandate from the CEO that says we can't buy food off the back of a big truck. So no Cisco, no U.S. foods. This food has to be made from scratch. I have to change the menu every single day, and I can't repeat a menu item within a 90-day cycle, and I need to cook it for 4,000 people a day. And Scotty said, maybe starting by sourcing food, that might be a big project, but I've got a couple farmers that may really benefit from a CSA drop-off. I was like, great, let's start it. So Matt and Kate Eddy walked into my life. Matt and Kate, farmers, their farm name was Ridgeland Harvest, and they are located just outside of Viroqua. Excellent carrot farmers, some of the best you'll ever buy. They came in with their young children into Epic, and I had to go to the CEO to ask, hey, Judy, is it cool if we start a CSA drop-off here? She's like, sure. You're going to have to present it to the 10,000 people that we have on home day to really kind of explain what it is. So she didn't view my speech And I went up in front of 10,000 people, and the name of my slide was titled, "What in the Health is Going On in Culinary?" That got a couple reactions. I got a phone call after that went live that day. Kate and Matt had sold out of CSA shares in one day. What that did for them is they were able to leave their second jobs and just focus on being farmers and food producers and members of a community. I learned the transformational power of that food in that moment, right? We fast forward. I spent 5 years at Epic. It was a thing. Finally, I realized I'm ready to go back home. I know where my food's coming from. I know the people that are growing it. What would it be like if we went back to the Driftless region, Ruthie, who said she would never come home? What would it be like if we went back home and we put a spotlight on the local farmers and food producers? What if we had this restaurant that was just a letter to our small family farms? And it was a letter that was written every single day with the changing menu that was based in love and respect. You think that's possible? And we decided it was. Actually, Ruthie decided that it was possible. She wanted a third baby at the time. I thought I was done having children. So my son Silas is just slightly older than my ownership of the Driftless Café. Ruthie always wins. That's rule number 3. Driftless Café, you get the employee manual. Just pay close attention to rule number 3 in that Ruthie always wins. We came back here. I cashed out my 401k from Epic. I had a business plan that I felt was rock solid. I had experience. I've done independent restaurants. I've done corporate work. I went to just about every single bank that I could find between Madison and LA Cross here and just pleaded. I even brought in my baby son, right? You pull out all the stops when you're trying to find financing. Look at the baby. Look at this menu. It cash flows. Nothing. I had the opportunity to meet with a small farmer in the Driftless region, who I'm not going to name, but with this same exuberance and enthusiasm. I talked about this dream of celebrating the small family farms, much like yourself in this room, of finding a way to lift up the people who are holding the line in the American food system. And that farmer looked at me after some back and forth. It wasn't the easiest process. I'm not going to paint that picture. But he said, "I'll do it. I'll finance it. I'll finance it at 5%. So the Driftless Café, our restaurant in Viroqua, is by far not the only farm-to-table restaurant in the United States of America. But I'm going to bet that we are probably one of 10 restaurants in the United States of America that are farmer-financed farm-to-table. And without that gift of belief, right? All the economic indicators, 80% of restaurants fail within the first 2 years, which is only slightly less sobering that 90% of married couples that get into restaurants get divorced. These are real slim margins. Thin ice I'm on, right? We open up the Driftless Café. First 6 months, we tracked zip codes off the credit card transactions, right? Fridays and Saturday nights, 62% of our transactions were related to zip codes in Madison, Minneapolis, Chicago, and Milwaukee. I have, there's a really excellent restaurant, and I'm going to bend your ear about it now. Next year when you come up here from Marbleseed, I'm going to ask that you look into the Hermitage. It's located in Gays Mills, Wisconsin. It's funky. It's going to be the most bizarre dining experience you'll have this year. It's run by nuns. And, America's become really, really removed from the idea. I do a lot of farm to school work. And you go into a second grade and you're like, all right, where does the chicken come from? Anybody want to guess where I get the majority of the answers? The grocery store. Oh, God. It is an uphill battle. These nuns have a closed loop farming system, right? The things that are on their menu are things that are grown right there. The amount of importing is small. The inputs are small. It is almost a love letter to the farming days of past before we got into industrialized agriculture or petrochemical agriculture. And you go there, and these nuns are mostly from France. I made the mistake of taking one of my folk musician friends to this restaurant, not really knowing that he had gone to Catholic school growing up. And we walked in the door, and the nun is there to take your order. And at the table, he looks up, he's like, dude, I'm afraid of nuns. That was the most uncomfortable 3 hours of his year. But the reason that I mention it, it's a beautiful example of what is possible, what can exist. Not to mention the fact that the profits that the nuns generate from this, they put right back into the community, right? Because they're farming. So they have folks, families that they've identified in Crawford County where every single week they supply 40 boxes of food to ensure that those who are going without and are food insecure have the opportunity to eat. It's wild, isn't it? So much of the organic food movement has become based in inaccessibility. It's one of those things to really examine. Why? Why does, of the $1.3 billion that Organic Valley does in sales, 26% of those sales are done in New York City adjacent zip codes? I go to New York City to cook a lot on behalf of Organic Valley. And you know what's wild? You sit down in Manhattan, maybe you're in Chelsea, and you're doing these dinners, and you're asking people, like, where, because it's always my first question, like, where do you get your food? Where does it come from? I can't tell you the number of people that say, oh, no, I don't go to the grocery store. I eat out every single meal. If I don't eat out, I DoorDash. I have it brought in. That's a massive disconnect in the food system. Organic Valley, $1.3 billion, 17% of their sales. Los Angeles, L.A. The food goes to the coasts. In the entire Midwestern corridor, starting in Ohio and extending all the way through the Dakotas, 4% of their $1.3 billion is sold in that corridor. What does that tell us? People are starving for real food. In the Midwest, if you leave here today and thank your lucky stars that you live in a place with agricultural traditions and farming traditions and your neighbors down the road are growing good food, that is a privilege. Trust me, I know about privilege. I'm a college-educated white man standing up here in front of you. I joke all the time that with the platform that we have with PBS, I am the poster child of that privilege. And it's my obligation to lift the voices in this room to a place where they are heard and recognized and, damn it, respected. This is not flyover country, brothers and sisters. This is the heartland. This is where it begins. And I'm telling you right now, it's got to begin today. This last year, I was invited out. I've got this sweatshirt on, the James Beard Foundation Institute. So I act as a scholar for the James Beard Foundation. Most of you are familiar with the JBF because you see the lists populate out, right? Oh, Best Chef Midwest, Best Chef Southeast. There is a different part to that foundation, and it's rooted in a 501c4. 501c4s are the tax categories that are lobbying entities. What we do is we host listening sessions in different pockets of the United States. We bring together chefs, farmers, advocates, people who generally are a little bit outspoken and on fire for their work. And we bring them together to select out people to go to these policy boot camps and then turn them loose on Congress. It's pretty fun, actually. You get some real out-of-pocket stuff that, different chefs bring from different perspectives, obviously different farmers. You all have a different background, a different area of expertise. This year, we were out in Washington, Carnation, Washington. Many of you are familiar with Carnation because it was the home of Carnation powdered milk. Beautiful farmstead. 20 chefs from around the United States were selected to come in. Thought leaders, thinkers, people who work in the lobbying industry, chefs who work in the lobbying industry, coming out. And I got to Carnation right exactly the time that the big, beautiful bill was going through Congress. And a lot of the people in the room were like, yeah, you need to reach out to your representatives. You need to call your elected officials. And I stood up because, remember, I'm from Lafarge. 745. Maybe not that bright. I was like, all this idea of calling my elected officials, it kind of feels like when you see politicians put up thoughts and prayers after yet another gun-related school shooting. I'm sick of calling my elected official. My elected officials won't actually take my calls. I've got one senator that I can call, the other one, no way. I've actually stood out that side of that senator's door in Washington, D.C. on 4 separate occasions. They don't want any of this smoke. It's probably the mustache, honestly. My congressional representative who sits on the U.S. Ag Committee, he doesn't want any of this. After he was elected, before he had gotten his committee assignment, he happened to stop by the restaurant, my restaurant, on a Monday. We're closed on Sundays and Mondays, right? We have to balance this work-life thing, living in a small community and actually showing up for the community and still servicing the people that come through the doors. And this particular individual, he didn't realize that the cafe was closed, and I went outside to meet him. I was like, yeah, sure, you're going to Congress. I want to meet you. I'm going to ask you about your committee assignments. Where are you hoping to go? What is it you want? And he's like, well, Luke, I just want you to know that I'm in Congress and I'm fighting for people like you. I was like, hey, do you have any questions? I looked at him. I sized him up. I'm not going to lie. Where were you on J6, dude? He turned and walked away. So he doesn't answer my calls either. Dang it. There's a war happening in American food system right now. It is. I wish I could term it a different way. I wish there was a softening. But I'm telling you, in the halls of Congress right now, if you want to watch an interesting example, the Modern Ag Alliance. We don't have anybody here from the Modern Ag Alliance, do we? No way we do. No way. Modern Ag Alliance has spent over $25 million in the last year. And usually, when lobbying organizations go, they're going to go to the USDA or their elected representatives. And the idea is that you would go to find influence, like, hey, maybe we need more subsidized crop farming in America. Maybe this is a good idea. Maybe this is how we plug and play. Maybe we need more, exports and imports and really focusing on the needs of the day. Because maybe tariffs aren't the answer. Modern Ag Alliance has spent that money in the last calendar year. And what they've actually done is not focus it at the USDA. They've focused it at dismantling the EPA. Here's a little secret. Modern Ag Alliance is completely funded, per their own website, by Bayer, the pharmaceutical company. Bayer happens to be the parent company of Monsanto. Maybe you noticed this last 2 weeks where the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, and Brooke Rollins, the Secretary of the USDA, have declared publicly that it is in the interest of national security to use Roundup. There's a war. The petrochemical companies obviously want you to use their Roundup Ready seeds to buy the chemicals to spray on it because, God forbid, of invasives. It's a real pain in the neck to weed all those rows or to get out there with a torch and burn them off or to think of different ways to revolutionize your crop rotation that keeps maybe some of that weed suppression in check. And, you know, we don't even really believe that the soil is a healthy living organism. So, like, whatever, nuke it. It doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, we'll even take those EPA regulations on dicambra, right, which is, in its chemical essence, Agent Orange, a defoliant. And we're going to recommend that that's the prescribed course of action. Modern Ag Alliance has also been really busy at work here in Iowa, right across the river. The Cancer Gag Act. Any of you heard of this? Yeah. People, I was in Senator Al Franken's office once, and we were lobbying on GMO and GMO labeling in the United States of America. And Al Franken, kind of a funny dude, right? Maybe some of his actions weren't so funny, but like there's an element of comedy. So you go into the senator's office, and Al Franken, and I'm not kidding, like sits down on the couch, pulls his legs up, takes his shoes off, and he's sitting there, and we're talking about genetically modified organisms. I'm like, this is surreal. He gets to me. He's like, what's your name? My name's Luke. Where are you from, man? I'm from Wisconsin. Are you a Packers fan? I was like, what do you think? He won't return my calls anymore either. He made a comment because we were talking about the incidences of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, right? And Minnesota is kind of a test ground for that because they have instances where students in schools contracted non-Hodgkin's lymphoma because their schools bordered fields that had pollen drift and pesticide drift. When you talk about the application of Roundup or dicambra, you need less than 3 miles per hour of wind in order to safely apply that. Have you ever been to Minnesota out on the plains? 3 miles an hour of wind, that's nothing. I got a kid in school in Austin, Minnesota, and I can barely hear him on the phone when he's calling me outside because it's just screaming across the prairie. It's not going to happen. I've also seen some of the markups that are coming through on the next iteration of the Farm Bill. More money for subsidy farmers. Okay. The problem is with the more money, the loops to apply for that money are tightening. We want to concentrate that money into the big family farms that dot the landscape. And I'm just going to speak from my perspective here, obviously. You're all entitled to your own opinions. I'm just a dude up here rapping at you. But when you see a 17,000 animal dairy farm, does that scream family farm to you? No. When you go in there and you see that they're milking cows 22 hours a day, that doesn't scream family farm. These are corporations masquerading as family farms in order to get that subsidy, that money into their farming operations. Where does that take money away from? Well, it takes money away from you and me because it's our taxpayer dollars that are subsidizing the corn, the beans, the rice, the cotton. And man, oh man, it makes sense until you lose your export markets. They're trying to bankrupt the American farmer. I don't know any other way to say it without screaming it from the rooftops. I have a very trusted mentor I talk with all the time about this idea of devaluing the dollar. What happens when the dollar becomes devalued and farmers like yourselves are forced to sell their land? Does that land go back into ag once it's sold off? This summer we just did an episode about the June dairy breakfast in Dane County, Wisconsin, right? Amazing thing. You go out and you have 7,500 people on a dairy farm. It's wild. People get a chance to look at the calves. You get a chance to eat pancakes. Very wholesome Midwestern fun. As we were leaving the taping that day, and I am not lying, Cambridge, Wisconsin, we're pulling out of the Hinchley family farm, a family that's hosted this event for five times. They believe in it. As we're pulling out across the street, what was a hayfield has earth movers scraping it clean. They're developing it. (2019), the New York Times writes an expose piece about climate change safe havens in the United States of America for people affected by climate change. If you don't like the words that I'm using, climate change, I get it. We do interviews all the time with folks in the agricultural community. We can say extreme meteorological events. I understand the political implications. It's pretty hysterical, though, when you ask a farmer about, hey, how does climate change affect your operation? Well, I don't like that word. We don't use that around here. That's political nonsense. You let the conversation go for 5-10 minutes. What are one of the challenges that really you face on your farm that is just, like almost impossible to figure out? Well, the weather. It's changing, okay? That's when Arthur really comes in handy, because I just kind of step away. They're not going to answer my calls anymore either. You notice a trend here, Dylan? Nobody's going to talk to me. 2019, New York Times writes this piece, Climate Change Safe Havens, and they select Duluth, Minnesota as the number 1 location in America for climate change refugees. Real estate prices in Duluth, Minnesota, boom, 8% jump. That, in the 2-year period, the number of sales by cash out-of-state buyers increases by 15% in that market. Suddenly, people that lived in those places and they've grown up in those places, or maybe they're farming in those places, or maybe they want to get into farming in those places, you can't afford to buy that land anymore. January 24th, 2021, CBS This Morning does an 11-minute expose piece, relatively same title, Climate Change Safe Havens in America. You know what city they picked as the number 1 city in America to relocate to in the face of the changing climate in the United States? Madison, Wisconsin. Now, I've dropped that stat in groups before, and there's always somebody who's like, hooray! Because they love Madison. And I do too. It's a cool city. They miss the gravitas. Republicans. That's what scares people these days. That and, Democrats. We know that this change is happening. The World Health Organization this last summer, declared that the Great Lakes Basin was one of the few safe havens for climate change. For those of you that farm and live in the Great Lakes Basin, I need you. I'm imploring you. Tell your story. Please, food in the United States of America is taken for granted, just like fresh water is taken for granted. These are the two things that we just like, oh, out of sight, out of mind. Yeah, I can go to the store. I can pick that up. Yeah, I can go to McDonald's. I saw this in COVID. I had people contacting me from Los Angeles. Dude, we cannot get food. We can't go to Whole Foods anymore. The lines are 4 hours. I have a daughter who has an iron deficiency. I need protein. Can you help us out? Can you hook us up? Sure. I went to St. Bridget's Meadows outside of Coon Valley, Wisconsin. I bought $500 worth of frozen meats. And then I went to the Coon Valley post office with styrofoam coolers, and I mailed them to L.A. You want to talk about a stir in a small town? You're shooting all this food out to Hollywood for what? Well, people are starving. You know what happens when people don't have access to food? It's bananas. It's absolute mayhem. Last year, I was invited to be a keynote at South by Southwest. I was in Austin, Texas, and I was actually, curiously, a little sidebar, I was really excited to be there. I was hosted by Food Tank. Danielle Nuremberg is doing a lot of good policy work, getting farmers, getting some of maybe the more corporate entities on the same page with farmers like y'all, which does make a difference. It's how we move the tide slowly. And I did this talk about like the amazing resilience of the Midwestern farming community, right? And there are 3 things that I really pushed on the crowd there. Maybe not as eloquently as I'm doing it today. Maybe it was a little bit more like, you need to do this now. And I'll tell you why. I had no idea that Maha was such a big presence in that festival. Make America Healthy Again. All of a sudden, like I'm looking out in the crowd and I see beautiful people like yourselves, people that I know, people that I've developed relationships with, people that I would hang out with. If I drank alcohol, I'd have a beer with any of you. We can settle for tea, maybe a coffee. But looking out in that crowd, I saw people who were taking the ideology of why you do what you do and why I do what I do and weaponizing it against us. And I was like, I guess that's a different perspective. And really having these deep philosophical conversations with some of these folks about how the federal government is going to be the one that comes in and saves us. Well, they're going to push all these ideas through, and they're going to push bills and lobbying and financing. And boy, oh boy, we're all going to be living on Easy Street and eating organic food with no food dyes in there. And man, oh man, the United States will finally be great again. I talked about how an act of resilience, an act of revolution, is growing your own food, right? If you can grow a tomato on your porch, that act of seeing something come up and blossom into something that you can eat, to make it a part of yourself or share it with someone you love. Hell, you can share it with somebody you don't like. I don't care. Grow the food. If you can't do that, find a farmer. Say thank you. Visit a farmer's market. Put yourself out there just a little bit to learn about the people growing your food. And I know I don't need to tell this room that, but it is essential. Put a name to the face in the storyline. And the last act, if you can't do either of those things, which, like I said earlier, is a privilege, then it's finding organizations and community like this. Finding your bedfellows, so to speak. People who share an ideology. And it doesn't have to be a complete conformity all the way across. But holy smokes, in this room collectively, we have more power together than any single one of us on our own, right? Leaning into that community. I got off the stage. I was feeling pretty good. You do a little bit of the press junket. It's weird. It's Austin. And a gentleman named Dave, I'm not going to say his last name. Dave is a food systems analyst. He's employed by the metropolitan complex of Dallas-Fort Worth. And Dave had been spending the previous 3 years working with the USDA and FEMA to calculate statistics in the case that Dallas-Fort Worth, which is the 4th fastest growing metro complex in the United States of America, if Dallas-Fort Worth were cut off from resupply, how much food do they actually have in that food shed? Anybody want to guess? It's actually 72 hours. 72 hours. They also discovered that in that same exercise, 95% of Dallas-Fort Worth's food was imported from outside of a 400-mile range. He pointed me to some statistics on the FEMA website and USDA, and then I've been in contact with him to calculate places like Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix has an 11 billion calorie need every single day for food. When that entire metroplex is eating, you need 11 billion calories for everyone to eat. On its best day, with all the maximum inputs, within a 400-mile radius around Phoenix, Arizona, only 7 billion calories a day are grown. They're already at a 4 billion calorie deficit. You start getting into the crazy geopolitical influences in that. In the 1980s, investors from other countries actually bought the agricultural rights in a lot of Arizona. And they didn't really care about the agriculture, but you know what they got with that ag? Water. Next time you're flying over Phoenix and you see all those metro complexes popping up, developments of 5,000 houses, 10,000 houses, in some cases 30,000 houses, going up as fast as possible, each one of those developments has to have 100-year water rights secured. It's part of the contract. And you think, like in the Midwest, like, yeah, we got water everywhere, no big deal, right? Down there, it's not the case. And they're buying that water from foreign entities. That's what happens when ag land goes out of production from folks like you. So, I'm up here dooming and glooming. How's this going, by the way? I feel like I'm on a little bit of a blind date here. Like, Rufus, if we were on Tinder, would you swipe left or right? Right being the good side. Rufus has to say that. He's one of my farmers. Are we doing okay? Okay. I wanted to make sure, like, I actually had a whole presentation put together that was all, like, screen grabs from the last 3 months of everything that's happening in Congress, and, like, just popping them up there to show you that, you know, some social scientists say that what we are experiencing right now is an extinction-level event, right? How you see these concentric circles of storylines coming around, and if you compare that with the indigenous tradition that time is not linear. What happened in the past, what happened in 1955, well, that's never going to happen again because that's past. No. There are different modalities of thought that say everything that happens keeps sequencing and coming back around. We are doomed to repeat it unless we examine the past to find a method to go forward. I had all these slides ready, and I was like, man, oh man, if I drop this on the good people of Marbleseed, it's going to be like a line of lemmings going up to that Cass Street Bridge. Like, that's it. I don't know how to maintain this anymore. One of the storylines that right now it's really I've had to examine. I examine it every day. I've got 3 mantras. I started working a few years ago with the University of Wisconsin's neuroscience department, the Center for Healthy Minds. And one of the invitations to come in and actually connect was over the idea that food, intrinsically, as humans, is a connector, right? Your food, my restaurant, or whatever brings people together. How do we create safe spaces so that people, when they sit down in those restaurant tables or they sit down, wherever they're at, they feel Like maybe we don't have similar ideas, but we can enjoy this food together and we can find a path forward through conversation and connection. So at the 3 mantras, number 1, emotions are often difficult to change. Nothing that I say up here today is probably going to affect any of you in your core values, why you do what you do, why you get up in the morning, why you farm, why you advocate, why you do any of these things, because those are your emotions, and those are hard to change. But thankfully, perspective is not hard to change. As a chef, I play in perspective. I might cook a dish that Lori loves. Dylan might hate that dish. Trying to move the needle a little at a time. Again, I'm going to go back to this idea of community, right? If we're all trying to move the needle a little bit at a time in solidarity, the needle moves a lot faster, right? Collectively, we have the ability to shift and alter the perspectives. Number 2, before I come up and I do anything public speaking wise, before this camera turns on, I have to sit and ground myself with this idea of behavioral contagions. If you put out love, people feel love. If I had come up here with my 17 slides of doom and gloom, you put out fear, people feel fear. Carl Jung, the psychologist, he wrote about this all the time in his Archetypes, in his Red Book. Behavioral contagions, they're things in your brains. They're chemical receptors that we don't necessarily have a ton of information about, but we know that they're there. So I have to tell myself, I got to come up here and be that love. It's a big thing, right? Because sometimes I just want to be scared too. But that's not fair. And I'm going to ask the same out of you. When you go back to your communities, you go back to your farms, you go back to your homes, you will inevitably encounter people that will bring that fear to you. I got to beg you to be resilient. The last one, the last mantra, and this is the hardest one for me to say today, but it's something that I had to instill in my restaurant because I live and work in a small rural community. Number 1, I don't care how you vote. That's your jam. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I think a lot of us in this room know that it matters, and we're seeing the direct consequences of that. But honestly, you got to do what works for you. I don't care how you vote. I also don't care how you pray, right? Every single one of us has a relationship with the divine. And whatever that looks like for you, that's great. I want my staff, my chefs, my servers to celebrate the world in all of our diversity, because that diversity is actually what makes us stronger collectively. And it promotes understanding and compassion and empathy. And this is a society right now that is going dangerously close to the brink of having no empathy. Last and, certainly not the least, but I don't care who and how you love. That's not my business either. Some might say this is horribly Midwestern, right? You just put your head in the sand. But what I know is in my restaurant, if I buy, let's say Rufus over here, I buy some produce from Rufus, and Rufus's neighbors maybe think differently than Rufus does. Let's hope so. Rufus and I have known each other since childhood. He used to strike me out in Little League. Yeah, I love you, buddy. You're such a good dude. Keewaydin Farms, look him up. It's a good guy. When we bring people into those spaces, it's like taking away any incentive to find division. Because what we need right now is solidarity and unity. We need to look for that. I don't care how you vote. I don't care how you pray. I don't care who and how you love. At the end of the day, every single person in here eats. And when we start approaching, if it's our friends, if it's our neighbors, if it's the people that you're holding the door for at Quick Trip, if it's acknowledging someone with eye contact or a smile or a hello, if it's being the neighbor that you want to be, we need that. And I need it to come from y'all, the farmers. I have said for years that the farmers in America do not understand the leverage that you truly have on people. When the game is shifted into commodity growing, and it's all corn, beans, soy, rice, cotton, wheat, there's not many of you left cooking food that you can put on your tables. You will be the last bastions of hope. In time, when that cycle swings, people are going to look to you for sustenance and support. I got to ask you to practice radical empathy, radical compassion. It's the most human act we partake in, is eating food. And man, oh man, are we lucky to have a lot of food around here that's delicious, but to also have some people that are absolutely delicious that I know can take on this work. Where am I at on time? I got a few. So call to action, right? Great, dude. Tell me about what you think I should do. This is such a white man thing to say. I'm pandering. Calls to action. I know y'all are busy. I know that farming, much like owning a restaurant, it's not a job. It's a lifestyle. People in urban areas will never understand that. They'll never understand that a dairy farmer, like I have had multiple conversations with dairy farmers who maybe are a generation removed that only left the farm on their honeymoon night because those animals needed their care and attention. What I'm going to ask in this window of change, find a way to get involved. Coming here is a great start. I'm hoping that folks, when you came here, maybe you saw somebody that you hadn't seen in a while, or maybe you made a new friend. And if you haven't made a new friend yet, if you haven't shook someone's hand, please, before you part ways today, find that connection. Maybe it's showing up and joining a board. You know, like I look at the board members here, and I just want to say, because this is the closing ceremony, can we give a round of applause for the Marbleseed Board of Directors? To show up, to put your time and energy and intelligence and passion into advocating for your friends and neighbors on their behalf. And most of the time, I don't know about this board. Is it a paid board? No. Yeah, this is all volunteer. Good. That makes the point that much stronger. It would have been an ironic twist if it was. You would have watched me backtrack real slow, like, yeah, civic advocacy. Eesh. One of the other things that I've actually found really helpful, and there are probably a lot of people in this room with the same experience, forming watershed coalitions. Ooh, this is a novel idea, right? This summer, some very dear friends and neighbors of mine formed the West Fork Watershed Council, which is, basically it's just a conglomeration of farmers and people that live on the watershed. What you discover when you start getting into those conversations is you bring a lot of different perspectives in, right? Not everybody thinks the same, but you find the common core values. We started them off as potlucks. And then we did have you guys heard of water sommeliers? Like this is a new thing in urban areas. These are people like trained wine sommeliers. They are highlighting water. Well, this water has high minerality. This water smells of feet. We had a tasting panel from all of our wells. And so, like, we're sipping on it, like, this is good. This is valley water. Oh, this is ridge water. You can really tell. The point of the exercise, though, was just to get people together and talking. A few months later, then an organization starts taking shape, and you find issues that really are worth taking on. Wait, there's a landfill expansion proposed right up the road that is going to come into this watershed. We have organic producers downstream. We have a robust trout fishing economy to the tune of $1.6 billion a year per the Trout Unlimited's economic impact study. And we're going to expand a landfill in karst geology? What kind of madness is this? And then it picks up steam. You bring in your producers because now we're a producer-led watershed group. And the farmers have leverage. You create leverage just by showing up. You got an FSA number? You are much higher on that list of hierarchy than most people in the American system. True that. I really can't make it more simple. And in that, you start to develop community. We know all about community in this room, right? You hung out until the last day of the conference to hear me get up here and talk. You've made friends. You've made connections. You've explored downtown La Crosse. You have immersed yourselves in good community. My ask is that you take this and go forward. Take this back to your homes. Take this to your farms. Find the people that are willing to amplify that work. We're out here. If I learned one thing in the last 2 months, running food and supplies into Minneapolis, because my indigenous friends reached out to me and said, yo, we are in a bad way. Our employees can't leave the house. By the way, I may be under federal investigation. I don't know. I say that tongue-in-cheek. I've got to fly next week, so we'll find out for sure. And I'll tell you why. In that power and perspective community and food, I found myself in a very uncomfortable situation. I was the only white person in the room with some really pissed off, marginalized people. I found myself bringing equipment in, bringing food in, and then sitting with the folks from Natives, the Native American traditional foodways. Being in this kind of like sanctum sanctorum of like thought leaders when it comes to indigenous politics and food and how interconnected they are. And I'm hearing young members like completely radicalizing. I'm getting my concealed carry. We're gunning up. This injustice when people could not leave their homes if you were black and brown in Minneapolis. And I will say right now, it is still happening. Do not close your eyes. Do not close your eyes. If I can sit in a room and be called out as being the only white person in there and being told, hey, you know, it's good to see a white person, you can please keep looking for it. We live in a society right now that is driven by algorithms. And it's our job to lift up and break those algorithms when we can. I found myself, because I was white and I have a clean driving record and my vehicle registration was current, giving employees rides to and from work in Minneapolis. If you weren't in the Twin Cities or you haven't been, it is like nothing I've ever experienced before. Businesses are locked, knocking on the door to be visually verified to go into a restaurant. That is the level of terror that most Americans have not experienced in their lifetime. And I say that with the caution that my marginalized friends have been screaming this from the rooftops for over 400 years. The indigenous folks even longer. When I got to Minneapolis that first day, my friend, Chef Kim Braveheart, she's Ogallala. I dropped off the supplies and equipment that I needed to bring up that we could get to the Somali aunties because they were making food while they were sheltering in place and then having that food picked up by folks like myself and redistributed to different neighborhoods in the cities. Really grassroots. I met up with Kim, and she was frustrated. She was a friend of Renee Good. It happened in her neighborhood. She looked at me, and if you've never been talked to by an indigenous auntie and been told what's what, I invite you to do that. There's some real power and wisdom in that voice. And she looked at me and she said, Luke, thanks for coming up. I appreciate this. I'm just going to tell you right now, this is a white people problem. This is the white people's responsibility to find solutions to what we are currently facing. And when I say this, I do not want to marginalize anyone in this room or call anyone out, but these are the systems of oppression, and I'm telling you, they are trying to use our food weaponized against us. Finding ways. If it's planting one more row of kale to take to the food pantry so that those marginalized populations can eat in your community. If it's maybe deciding, you know what, I'm not going to plant that, but I'm actually going to go to the food pantry and volunteer. We had this very eye-opening experience this summer of filming in Milwaukee. Kinship Café. Kinship is this 501c organization that is dedicated to teaching people who have come out of disadvantaged situations or the criminal justice system how to cook and live in modern food service environments. And they have a very comprehensive program. It's a 501c3. You show up at Kinship, you do 35 hours of work in a week. You sign a 1-year contract. I will be here for 1 year, 35 hours a week, you're on the floor. 5 hours of that week, you are meeting with a job mentor and coach, helping you understand and digest the skills that will make you palatable going forward in the food service industry. As if that wasn't cool enough, they also took donations together and they bought a 3-acre farm. Doesn't sound like much, right? 3 acres. What are you going to do with 3 acres? Some of us in this room probably have lawns that are bigger than 3 acres. 3-acre farm last year, they produced 22,000 pounds of produce, collected and harvested by volunteers. That produce is distributed through the River West Food Pantry. That River West Food Pantry serves, I want to say it was like 400 people. Twice a week, they have the opportunity to come in, select some of this produce in its unadulterated form, but then they also pay chefs to come in and cook food because food is this connector and uniter. The food pantry's doors opened at 4 p.m. By 1 p.m., people were starting to line up outside. Food is love. The sentiment that I took away from that is in a lot of urban areas in the United States of America. This idea that no one is coming to save us, we have to save ourselves, has been the bedrock of social change, social justice, and growth. This last summer was the first time I ever saw it echo its ripples out into rural Wisconsin. Wait, nobody's coming to save us? They're going to cancel SNAP? What do we do? This is the moment. This is the moment to stand up for what you believe in. This is the moment to grow the food that connects you to your soil and your soul. This is the moment to be Midwest nice. Hold the door. Shake the hands. Say thank you. Find a farmer. Support that farmer. Encourage them through the risk. Join a CSA. Encourage others to do that. Maybe set aside CSA portions that can be donated to local food pantries. We've got to use this Midwest nice to our advantage. Because as you know, no one is coming to save us. But I am so confident and so excited, and I believe with my whole heart that in this room, we can save ourselves. Thank you so much, Marbleseed. Wow. Thanks, guys. Anybody have any questions? How do you save yourselves? Make a friend, shake a hand, hold a door. Grow food. Grow food, Dylan. I mean, I think people will continue to have to eat. And because of that, they will continue to come back. And when we're there with open arms, that is the ultimate act of empathy and compassion. That's Midwest nice. Any other questions? Brain busters? No? Oh, okay, what do we got? Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. My name is Jared Momani from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
I have actually been in this country for 40 years, and my challenge has been with what's going on in Minneapolis. I have my son who went to UW-Madison, and he's working in New York City. I have a daughter who went to UNC Chapel Hill, and she's working in Minneapolis. With what is going on, I had a struggle. My son calls me from New York saying, "Dad, don't go out, stay inside. It's dangerous out there." My daughter, who is in my house, wants to go out and protest, and I'm scared she could be killed. So that was my challenge. How do I navigate through these generations? Because this is their home. It may not be my home. I was not born here, but been here for many years. They have been born here. How do I navigate these two situations? That's been my challenge. One other challenge is I'm a farmer. I don't own land. I rent. Every 2 years, I'm moving. I want to be organic certified, but because I don't own my own land, I'm having a challenge. How do I get there? So how can you help me out?
Yeah. That is an amazing question. And first and foremost, I want to just acknowledge that this is a terrible situation. I'm so sorry. You have my assurances that until I take my last breath on this planet, I see you and I hear you, and I will advocate against that with every piece of leverage I have. Secondarily, land banks. This is a conversation that we keep coming back into. I sit on the board of directors for a place, the Kickapoo Valley Reserve, located in Lafarge. It's jointly managed between the Ho-Chunk Nation and the state of Wisconsin. It's the only property in the United States like that. We are putting together, coalitions for BIPOC farmers led by the nation, trying to encourage stability. And while that may not directly affect you in Minneapolis, it may be something that looking forward in the future is a possibility. I need my community in this moment. Does anyone have any alternative advice for our friend over here? Is there something you can say? Yeah, go ahead. St. Paul.
I know the Twin Cities Agricultural Land Trust is working with Commons Land to do some shared ownership models where I also am a non-land owning, commuting, 10 years of moving from place to place. I totally feel you. And so I was excited to hear about this. Commons Land and TCALT, Twin Cities Agricultural Land Trust, are working on options for us. So we can chat.
Thank you. That's awesome. Does anyone here from Marbleseed, is there any way that some of this stuff that gets tossed out here, which is really important and very sensitive, can that be disseminated to the group participants of the event? Is that possible? Thank you. On the ASN, yeah. Yeah. I would like the opportunity to look into that a little bit more and maybe ask some of the folks that I know, specifically in natives and the indigenous food movement, what resources are available, and be able to connect back with you. Is that okay? Rufus, can I ask you to grab his contact information so I do that? Thank you. Look at me delegating. Yeah, I know. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Y'all want to get out of here? Nah? All right. Wow. That's usually that has never happened before. Dude gets off the mic like, thank God. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I'll just talk loud. I'm an old person. I graduated in 1981 from UC Berkeley. So remember, 1981. He's just a young person. I have a strange bachelor's degree in the political economy of industrial societies. Wow, UC Berkeley. But I also, to offset that, took bunches of classes in Native American studies, so my brain would kind of get it, okay? And UC Berkeley is proud of having more Nobel Prize winners than any other college. So some of them knew what they were talking about. What they were teaching us in economics was that U.S. farm policy has never, ever, ever tried to save the family farm. It's since 1900 and on, it's been trying to destroy family farms. So I'm just saying this, they haven't won yet, okay? So if that's 1981, and that's from 1900 on, yes, bad things are happening, but don't give up the fight and good things are happening too.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Yeah.
Just a comment. I'm from Minneapolis, born and bred. I think what we are seeing in the Twin Cities now is a model for the nation. I am unbelievably proud of what we have done in our cities.
As you well should be.
And when I see reels of white people, black people, Hispanic people, Asian people, indigenous people, Somalians, Hmongs, all of us together on those streets, fighting for what's right, I am so proud, and I think we are a model for the nation and to the world at how diversity can work.
Yeah.
And how we can pull together as a community to support and love everyone.
Amen. Yeah, Minneapolis, it's incredible. One of the things working around chefs, specifically in the Beard Foundation, it was very clear very quickly when my friends and colleagues at Natives stopped using text messages. Everything's on Signal. And what ended up happening is communities became very, very familiar, at least from the outsider's perspective coming in. You figure out who your neighbors are. And it doesn't matter. I mean, honestly, it goes back to that same, I don't care how you vote, pray, love, whatever. It becomes very, very elemental very quickly. And in reporting to other chefs in different locations around the United States, because we are watching this, there is some intel out there. And being able to communicate to those municipalities, it became very apparent very quickly that most metro complexes didn't have anywhere near the level of sophistication. Because I will say, in the last 6 years, y'all have endured a lot. But it's made you so strong. And it is a beacon for the rest of the world to follow. So I want to tell you that in that same spirit of amplifying, it's important to see these systems. It's important to lift those systems up. The day of the peaceful protest, right? When, who knows how many people were down there? It was a lot. I was watching that and I was crying And I called my folks who were in the Phoenix Metro Complex, and they had no idea. They had no idea that this was even happening. Through the Center for Healthy Minds, not to get on like a soapbox, but you know that, and I'm going to tell you, anyone who has a phone in their pocket right now, these things are the cigarettes of our generation. I mean it. It is the absolute downfall. And I say that with evidence that backs up the fact. I know a guy named Thon. Thon is 54 years old. He's from Albany, Wisconsin. He worked his entire career at Apple. He's a tech designer. Through the Center for Healthy Minds and the neuroscience departments at MIT, Stanford, and the University of Wisconsin-Madison, Thon's entire job for Apple was to design the color spectrum on your phone, because they have empirical evidence that it excites your dopamine receptors. Your brain is addicted to the color spectrum. Fun fact, if you want to try it and like, this guy's totally not for real, you can. You can go into your accessibility settings and turn that thing to grayscale. The longest I've ever made it with grayscale is 3 days. Your brain hates it. But when we saw that movement of people, and then I could reach out and mainstream media doesn't pick it up, we're also seeing forced consolidation in mainstream media. This is the time when we need each other. This is the time when you need to shake a hand. And if it feels scary going into a place like Minneapolis, I hope all of you met someone this weekend that you could feel empowered and encouraged to reach out to. Sometimes it's just as easy as, how can I help? And I think the point to remember is, like, working in a lot of those communities, it takes a while to build trust. With this mustache, I really had to go above and beyond. I am not a cop. I've got a neck tattoo. I promise. I'm not. I would have to tell you. Would I? I don't know. But it's so important to show up. It's so important to make that connection. And don't trust your phones, because all that is driven at you, towards you, as a marketing ploy to keep you distracted and discontent. I like this. As it goes, the questions pick up momentum. This is good. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Rufus.
Yeah.
You did that 40 in about two seconds flat. I just wanted to say to the brother over here, you do want to also look up the Buy, Protect, Sell program. That's how we got on our farm. Just a shameless plug. It was defunded, like most of the things that's for us. So when you guys are thinking about your donations, American Farmland Trust. Anyway, also I wanted to thank you, Luke, for your bravery. Overwhelmingly, at least when you look at stats, farmers are the ones who vote for administrations like this. So you being willing to sit there and tell your truth, and looking at what most of these farmers look like, I appreciate that bravery. I'm just hoping that it's much more contagious, and I'm hoping that way more people are willing to fight. And you're right, what we're seeing now is terrible, but we've been dealing with this for a long time. It's only a big issue now because white people are also being involved.
Amen.
So we can stop this, but it's gonna take all of us.
Yeah. And that's what I would say too. I guess any person in the room that looks like me, hopefully better looking than me, but again, going back to working in communities, it takes a while to build trust, right? I can't tell you how many folks I had reaching out to me in Minneapolis who were just waking up to what was going on because of Renee Good's death. And when you talk to folks in these communities, this has been happening. I mean, I wish Jen Falk was here from Ohelagu, the Oneida Nation, because their sacred white corn, they were the ones that fed George Washington's troops at Valley Forge. The Oneida broke from the Haudenosaunee Confederacy to feed the Revolutionary Army that was starving to death in the winter. And when George Washington became the president, one of his first acts was to send General Sullivan into the Haudenosaunee territory and burn the villages and slash the crops. And they carried with them the sacred white corn all the way to Wisconsin, where they still grow it in secret today because it's part of who they are. To build trust, to build a community, it takes work and it takes vulnerability. It takes being afraid. It takes all that you can possibly imagine and more. And as settlers, we have to be patient. We're very used to having what we say fly in a lot of situations, and I'll say that as a white man, right? That is a learning curve for us to take on and carry. But I really appreciate your transparency and honesty in that. And I appreciate, you've opened up your farm, your time, your story, and sharing that with the rest of the world, right? We're here to amplify. We're here to build back better. Were there other questions? Yeah, mustache brother.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, this is not so much a question, but more just kind of a comment, something I've really been thinking about a lot this conference. And at our farm, we're just north of Duluth. At our farm, we've made a real point of welcoming people to our farm. We lure them in with pizzas.
Yeah.
But I just want to kind of say that I think as farmers, we're uniquely positioned to kind of cultivate and share these positive values in the world because it takes those values to grow our crops. It's like you have to love and care for your soil, and as you do that, you cultivate and you become an embodiment of those values. And I think that authenticity can lend itself to our communities. Like, so if we want to grow those values in our society, it's like it coming from the farmers is the most genuine, authentic place that those values can come from, and to share with folks. So I just want to say that out loud.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome, and thank you for that. I'm sure we've all heard the old saying, "Farming is the noblest profession," right? Specifically, farming at the scale that y'all do it. I like to really celebrate sometimes, and man, sometimes farmers get really bent out of shape on this one. But embracing intentional efficiency sometimes as small organic farmers, there are a lot easier ways to do some of this work. But it's the values that make it different. It's the values of sustainability, that your soil is a living organism, that your water is clean and your air is fresh, and that education is part of it naturally, bringing people to your farm to serve them pizzas, and then they get a chance to experience and learn where their food comes from and their farmer's name, and they develop an identity around it. And honestly, that's my whole life arc. Being a kid from a small farming town in southwestern Wisconsin who didn't have an identity, I'm trying to be that, like, you can do this. You can do this. It's possible. I look around here and I see so many farmers that are like absolute heroes of mine in this room right now. It's possible. You're making a difference. Keep going, please. Yeah. Handlebars in the
Thank
back.
you. That's right. Hi, everybody. I think I talked with a lot of folks here. My name is Matt. I was in the ER last night on I had an allergic reaction to something, so I'm like a little tired right now.
Yeah, dude.
But I do something with a lot of folks that are here, kind of like what you're talking about. But it's called Farm Buds, and we do group trips to farms. We get folks that are in the cities. We get folks that are in rural spaces together to go to farms. We meet each other. We got to John's farm, maybe a few other farms here, but it's really, really awesome. It's kind of like what you're talking about. We come with solidarity. We come with reciprocity. We do intros. We talk about, like, we get to hear their story. We do work together. We work on projects. We build high tunnels. We do all this infrastructure stuff. But I guess my question is, if anyone knows any funders, we've done about 129 trips to 52 different farms. And we go to farms all around. We go to tribal nations. It's like a really beautiful thing. So if anybody knows any money to help us and wants to be a part of this, we could definitely use some more support.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. They are out there. I mean, yes. Let me get your contact information. I won't make Rufus take it. I'll just corner you at the end of this. Although Rufus, if you want it to be a deer, buddy.
Farm buds.
Farm buds. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah? Are we feeling it? Are we ready to go be forces for good? Hell yeah. Yeah. Let's give it up for the wonderful people. Let's give it up for the wonderful people at Marbleseed for pulling this event together. Let's give it up again for the board of directors. I want to make sure and shout out all the people that are affiliated with the Lacrosse Center who have done the sometimes thankless work, pulling the trashes, staffing the all those things. It takes all of us to make a community. I would like it if you gave yourselves a hand for being a very attentive and receptive crowd. This could have gone really poorly if you weren't so cool. So thanks a lot. I appreciate it.